There we are. We're live. Hey, everybody. I'm here with my friend Greg Galindo, and we're here in Austin, Texas. Yeah.
Yes.
And,
Happy St. Patty's Day.
That's right. It is St. Patrick's Day. Oh, you're already wearing green.
Sure.
Ow! So anyway, Greg and I have known each other for a while, and today I just kind of wanted to talk about being Latino in Austin in general. We're talking about, this is the initial video for Latinos for America, and we just kind of talked about all the different aspects of being Latino in America and what that means. And gosh, we were just like talking nonstop. So one of the really first, I kind of want to, Greg, to give you a little bit of background, like how you got to Austin. So you were a Army brat?
Yeah, I was an Air Force brat. My dad did 25 years Air Force, born in California, there until I was 3, and then Tucson, everything was like a 3-year stay. So California 3 years, Santa Barbara area, Tucson, Arizona 3, West Germany. So I got exposed to a lot of different cultures, especially in Germany, but even just in the military, you're kind of around a lot of different cultures. Never saw myself as Latino, so to speak, because I was raised with a diverse group of kids, and my parents never really imposed you're Latino or you speak Spanish. It was always just around a diverse group of people and kids that I was raised amongst until I got back here to Texas when I was about 10 years old. And then went to middle school and kind of saw how people segregated themselves, kids at that time, amongst the racial lines, amongst their own people, their own culture. So I thought that was super interesting because I have a similar story. Well, not similar in that way, but we were just talking about how you figure out, how much Latino, there's just a lot of layers, and then we talked a lot about speaking Spanish because you do speak Spanish. Oh, no, not fluently. Okay. No, I speak a little bit, más y menos.
Okay, maybe better than mine, we don't know.
Because I wasn't raised speaking Spanish, so my mom and dad were kind of in their day, and we talked about this, you were looked at as a lower class citizen if you had an accent. So even within their households back in the 60s, my dad did speak Spanish, his first language, but my mom was encouraged not to, because if you had an accent back then, you were automatically kind of classified as a lower class citizen. So, when my brother and my sister and I were born, they really didn't teach us, and being that we lived in different places around the country, we weren't here in Texas, there wasn't the need for it, I guess, they thought. And then moving back here and of course becoming an adult, I wish I would have learned. So I've kind of learned a little bit along the way. Can get along at restaurants and maybe on the street a little bit, but far from fluent. Yeah, I wish I was.
And that's a similar story that I have, is that my grandmother was first generation. Same deal. She didn't want her kids to experience the discrimination that she experienced. So it was like no Spanish speaking. She didn't want them to have an accent. So her 12 kids didn't speak Spanish. So then that trickled down to, the 30 grandchildren or whatnot. And so it was like growing up, I think being so close to the border, there was a tension that I didn't really know what it was, but it was like, I know as a child, I said, I don't speak Spanish, I'm American, and felt proud that I didn't speak Spanish. Well, now that my eyes are a little more open, I so wish that I did speak Spanish. It's so helpful. And I was just saying, there's some study out that's saying immigrants are not teaching their children Spanish because they want them to assimilate, yet white people, Americans, are teaching their children Spanish because they want them to have a leg up. And just the irony there, and the more that I've been digging into the history of how Latinos came to be, it's a lot. I was telling Greg when I first started Latinos for America, as of now, I usually vote Republican, but as I've been digging into the history, I don't know what I am anymore, and that's been really interesting. Greg was telling me stuff about Bernie Sanders that I didn't know, and I was like, I will have to go look into that. So, do you wanna explain how you see socialism?
Yeah, I think socialism has kind of a black cloud cast over it. The last few years, as Barack has been called, Obama's been called a socialist, and now Bernie Sanders has been labeled as that. There's two types of socialism. There's your classic, and then your democratic, which that's kind of the category Bernie falls under. And I identify a lot with Bernie's policies because I do think mega corporations do need to be taxed at a much higher rate. I do think 1%ers do need to be taxed at a little bit of a higher rate. I do think wealth needs to be spread out a little bit more throughout the country to give people equal opportunities, especially those coming from other countries that are going to be paying their taxes, going to be working hard here in America. I think the minimum wage does have to go up. Nobody can live on the minimum wage as it is now. I think privatized prison systems need to be evaluated and looked at, because what people are doing is they're incarcerating minorities at a super high rate for crimes that are usually, if you look across the board, you can see a huge discrepancy in how minorities will be charged with a crime versus their Anglos for the same crime. And that's, to me, by no coincidence. When you are profiting from putting people in prison, that is going to create an imbalance in itself that can lead to destruction. So I love what he's doing there. I love that he's fighting Wall Street. He's fighting against these mega corporations to keep them out of government. I love that his immigration reform, by letting people assimilate, by letting them have time to get a job, get their driver's license, get their citizenship. I just identify with a lot of Bernie's values. Being a Christian, even though he's not, to me he acts more as a Christian than anybody we've had or anybody we have currently running for office. I think Bernie, although he doesn't have maybe proclaim the Christian faith, I think his actions are that of somebody who would be proud to say that his ways are more like Jesus than I think so many other candidates at this time. So
wow.
Feel the burn, yes. Love me some Bernie.
Now I'll tell you what, I was not expecting him to say that. And that's what's been so interesting, and I think that's what will be really interesting about this journey, Latinos for America, because it's just about opening up that conversation. We kind of talked a little bit about there's this big space and how maybe our community in general has a more, I don't know, subdued way of dealing, kind of passive, a little more passive.
Yeah, they're passive.
And so we want to open up that conversation because there's so many of us, and yet we're so underrepresented. What does Latino even mean, and how does that? Where is the divide? And even this inner tension that we were talking about. Whether it's like within the Latino community, it seems like on the one hand it's like, oh, you don't speak good Spanish, or you have an accent, and then on the other hand it's like, so maybe like, you're too Mexican, versus on the other hand, it's like you're trying to be too white because you don't speak Spanish at all. And I think there's this group of us that are like, I don't know, I'm just kind of stuck in the middle. I'm not really sure like who I am or where I fit. And that's going to be a really interesting journey. Greg is a successful business owner in Austin here, and I'm really, tell him about your business.
So I own my own personal training business. It's called Good Fight Fitness. And what I aspire to do, is expose some of the local nonprofits here in Austin by donating a portion of my proceeds back to those nonprofits, getting my clients to go to some of their events and kind of telling them about it, and also not just expose them, but also be a part of these nonprofits. So I've mentored with a group called Explore Austin. I've run community camps for CASA of Travis County, and I mentor with a group called RBI, which is Reviving Baseball in the Inner City. So it's all about kind of reaching out to the inner city, getting some of our underserved youth just to be exposed to a bigger picture. With Explore, we took them for 6 years to Colorado, to Wyoming. They learned team building. They learned what it is to be outdoors and how to survive outdoors, and just kind of expose them to the beautiful landscapes of America and get them out of their kind of urban inner city communities and show them there's so much more that we have to offer here. So I have a big heart for the nonprofits, especially the locals, try to keep it local. So I do my own personal training business. I run that, and then I'm also a real estate agent. So
isn't he a good example of a Latino in America? I love that. Is there anything that I didn't ask you? I can tell that Greg and I are going to have more conversations, so you can be expecting to probably see him on some more videos. But is there anything right now? I know we just barely scratched the surface, but is there anything else you want to share?
No, I think one of the biggest things, and I think Jen's doing a great job of doing this, is getting people to realize how important your voice is. Especially the Latin community. I think, as Jen said, I think we feel like we need to kind of sit in the corner. I think other cultural groups have a lot of representation and a huge influence, and I don't think the Latino community is represented as strongly as it could or should be, and I don't feel like we need to sit back anymore. I think we help make up the infrastructure of this country, literally. And I don't know, I think our economy would collapse if there were ever somebody like Donald Trump put in office, completely collapse, not to get too political. I think we need to stand up. We need to have a voice. We need to stop sitting in a corner. We need to be strong and be prideful. And it takes people like Jen, and I think it's going to take people like myself to say, you know, let's be a voice. Let's not sit back anymore. And let's get our people to vote. And let's get them to be represented. So that would be my word. That would be my encouragement, I think, for our communities to kind of bond together, to be that voice, to support each other's businesses especially, so there becomes that economic influence, and to get out there on the political landscape and vote and encourage our children to do the same.
On that line, how do you suggest that people educate themselves on the issues? And just Googling? Is that how you...
Well, you know, you're going to find biases everywhere, whether it be CNN or whether it be Fox News.
Fox News.
Yeah, there's huge biases there. Don't get me started. So I think independent research with non-biased news sources is a great way to get started.
When you find one, you let us know, okay?
Democracy Now! Democracy Now! Is one of my favorites. So.
Actually, I watched some videos of theirs last night.
They're awesome. They're amazing.
There you go.
Yep.
We would love your feedback below. This is really just going to be a space where we open up the conversation. You know what? I thought I knew things, and I started reading, and I was telling Greg, now I don't know. Now I just feel like I'm open to however this evolves. But we thank you so much for being a part of it. I'm going to link to Greg's information, so if you're in Austin, for sure, check him out. And I just think, you know, some of the topics that we discussed are really important. So just being very intentional about what's my place, you know. How do you say in Spanish? Levante. Is it time to? It's time to stand up. So that is it for this time. Make sure that you subscribe to our email newsletter. I'm going to be sending out very frequent updates. The election's coming up, so whether we vote the same is not as important as that we vote. So there you go. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.